WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by JW Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know's on there. We want to thank you for being with us today. Each and every week at Tuesday at 2:30, we come to you on Star Communications Channel 16 and, of course, WCLN Radio. We're talking about business today. We're talking with Kenneth Ragland. Kenneth, thank you for being with us today.
You're welcome.
Want to open the show with thanking you also for coming to Sampson County and opening a location here in Sampson County that a lot of folks are familiar with. It's called Garland Shirt Company, which most folks are remembering that from Brooks Brothers. And it's a cut and sew operation.
Correct.
Had location here in Garland. Also had a big distribution center here in Clinton. It's now gone out of business. I'm going to use this phrase. You were kind enough to look at that, see potential, step into this environment and say, I'm going to do something with that, and bought that company, and it's now operational. I want to thank you for that, but I want to open with that because I want folks to know how important that is. And I want folks to know how important it is that you're willing to sit down and talk to everyone about where you're going with that company. But first, I want folks to get to know you. You've been in the cut and sew business. You graduated with your master's degree and stepped out in this world years ago.
Correct.
Why? How? When? Tell us about that.
When I was in grad school, I interned for a year at a company that most people know, The Gap, out in the Bay Area in California, where I'm originally from. It felt like an industry, the apparel industry, that I had a connection to. And starting in 1981, that connection became very real, and it's been the industry that I have been in ever since.
And a lot of the companies, for example, the W Diamond Corp that you're with and president of, I see that company and I see names associated with it that a lot of people recognize. I know a lot of folks do. I see Hart, Schaffner, and Marks.
Correct.
You know, I see Sansa. I mean, the list of names is just, it's part of America. 87 when
1887
Hart, Schaffner,
is when Hart, Schaffner, Marks was formed in Chicago.
Suited presidents.
Correct. It's a company that has a very interesting and wonderful legacy to the Chicago community specifically. It has had hard times along the way, as many companies do. The gentleman that I work with and am now partners with here in Garland, he had a vision to acquire the company out of a bankruptcy 9 years ago, believed that there was a place in the U.S. still for manufacturing of product in the United States, specifically apparel. He took a large amount of risk, and 9 years later, the company is thriving. And we're essentially using the same recipe here in Garland, where we acquired a business or a factory that had been involved in a bankruptcy, that being the Brooks Brothers bankruptcy in 2020. And we knew fundamentally there was a factory here that had the bones, as we will refer to it. It had the people, and there was a need to, in our mind, reopen the factory. There was an opportunity. I don't want to make excuses for, we are a for-profit business. This is not a charity, but we fundamentally believe that having a factory that is here in the United States that can allow people to work, we're a union shop. I was saying to somebody yesterday, we're never going to be the least expensive cut and sew operator you're going to work with, but we're paying a very, very good wage, and we're providing extraordinarily good benefits to the workers. And we gain loyalty that way. We take care of our people, and that's been the secret to our success in Chicago, and we believe we're going to replicate it here.
And one of the things I've noticed that a lot of the companies that you've been involved with have anywhere from 200 plus employees.
Correct.
Typically, 70 million plus in revenue. When you look at the larger stage, they're not really large companies, but they have a lot of exclusivity built into them. And I mean that in the sense that what you turn out is quality stuff.
We certainly believe we do. A suit from Hart, Schaffner, Marks sells anywhere from $799 up to as high as $1,500 if it's a made-to-measure custom suit. So it's using all wool. It's not using any blends or polyesters. It's not something that you're going to find in a lower end retail location. You're going to find it in Saks Fifth Avenue historically, Nordstrom's, Dillard's, Belk, Macy's, Bloomingdale's, and better specialty stores around the United States.
One of the things that's also interesting when I look at your background, you mentioned you were originally from California, but your name shows up in not only Chicago but New York,
correct,
D.C.
correct.
It's a number. It's like a when I look at it, I'm tracking where you're going and who you're connecting with. You've got quite a footprint, and it's not just the United States.
Correct. For many years, owned a factory in northern Italy. It was a brand trouser company called Zanella. Doug Williams and I are the partners. We owned that factory for a number of years and literally spent 1 week every month in northern Italy over a 4-year plus span. Have been involved in sourcing and production management globally, most every country in Asia, many in Africa, certainly in Europe. So I've had the luxury of being able to enjoy a very robust professional life because of the industry that I find myself in.
Do you see yourself also developing all of that experience? You're developing an understanding of the economics globally, not just in the United States, but there's certain things that I keep looking at that's happening. And before the show today, we were talking a bit about this idea of expectation, that people's expectations have been rattled quite a bit over the past couple of years. Is that something that you could speak to? Is where are people's expectations now, particularly as it relates to your industry?
I think that for a lot of years, there was a lot of talk about the idea that made in the U.S. was important. But I think, unfortunately, it was more talk than it was reality. Since the pandemic started, I think there is a more fundamental shift to the idea that made in the U.S. is material and does matter. It matters to the workers. I think that that's part of the reason that we bought the Garland facility, is that we fundamentally believe that the opportunity and the timing for made in the U.S. is as good as it's ever been. And here was a factory that knew what to do, had the expertise, had the staff, had the machinery, had everything that you would want. And it was more or less just plug and play. We arrived, we closed the transaction. We spent most of the summer cleaning the factory up, getting it ready to reopen. By early October, we were back in business. And it's unique that way. Of the one place I will complain, and I'm going to give you a complaint, I wish the government, federal, state, and local, was as committed to made in the U.S. as I think customers and retailers are today. There's a lot of talk about making in the United States, but I think it's probably as much because of the inertia that government has to deal with, and it's very bureaucratic, very slow. But there's an opportunity for people like our company and others to do production for the military, TSA, many of the agencies, again, at every level, and the impediments are just impossible to get through most of the time.
One of the things that I want to follow up with that comment is that typically I think folks look at, as you kind of pointed out, quote, the government to take the lead and do things and to accomplish things. And in reality, if I'm reading the threads of what I read correctly, the folks that's leading and cutting edge and technology from shirting or whatever it may be, is the businesses and industries in this country.
Yeah, it always has.
It's totally different from what the perception is.
The government provides a forum through which ideas might get exchanged, but they're a buyer. They are not a developer. And, again, it's, 2 years ago when the pandemic started, my factory in Chicago, we did furlough everyone on March the 16th when the governor of the state stated, stay at home. One of the worst days that I'd ever had in my life, and more so because I wasn't truly sure that we would ever reopen. Because at that point, no one had a true clue of what was going on. Within 2 weeks, members of my management team started coming up with the idea we could make face masks. And that started an effort that by the middle of April, we had recalled every single employee back to work. And we spent the balance of April, May, June, July, August making face masks that we sold primarily to business. So Uber was a huge customer. The company Crate and Barrel was a very, very large customer, down to a law firm that we work with that bought 200 masks. And we weren't trying to make money off of them. We were just simply trying to keep people employed, knowing that eventually there would be a better day. But what was interesting, we tried to speak with the government at all levels, try to speak with the hospital systems, and the impediments that we reached were just incredible. Everyone wanted things to be made in a facility that was FDA certified. Well, FDA certification means you're talking about a clean room environment. It would have taken me a year to retrofit my factory to then go through a certification process. It wasn't worth it. But what was frustrating about it is I'm the first to admit I want a doctor and a nurse wearing whatever the best mask is that's possible. But you had administrative staff, you had the people that were in the admitting sections, you had orderlies, you had janitors. They didn't need to have the same quality of mask that did a doctor or a nurse in an operating room. And yet you couldn't cut through the bureaucratic red tape that it had to be FDA certified. So that's where, and I understand government has to be careful because there's been a lot of people historically that have made very bad deals or have been very shady and, have cheated all of us in one form or another. But we're not somebody that was going to be, here today and gone tomorrow. We were sincerely trying to do something to help our fellow citizens as well as ourselves. And you might as well just have taken a 2x4 to your own head, versus making the effort. It was very frustrating.
We're going to take a break. It's kind of an opportune moment. When we come back, I want to follow up on that thread for a moment and talk about some of those frustrations, because I think that's important for folks to understand the challenges you face trying to create an environment of employability. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking with Kenneth Ragland, the owner of Garland Shirt Company, also very instrumental in a number of companies right here in the United States. We'll be back in a moment.
Experiencing slow internet? If you have a fast internet package, the problem is most likely your wireless router. With more devices using Wi-Fi, your wireless router may not be able to deliver the speed and coverage you need. We now have the leading solution to enhance your internet experience. Using small devices in a mesh network, these Wi-Fi appliances cover just about any size home so that all your devices can operate to their fullest potential. Whole home Wi-Fi from Star Communications. Get the most out of your internet connection.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We Should Know is on the air. We're talking with Kenneth Ragland, owner and operator of Garland Shirt Company right now. But Ken, you were telling us in the first segment, we talked about a number of companies that you've been involved in. One of those is Chief Financial Officer. You've been CEO. You're president of the W Diamond Group Corp, which we tossed out a lot of names there. But it was names that folks recognize that have seed as far as parts of the history of this country, to include Hart Schaffner Marx, to include Sonsabelt, to include a number of others that you could mention. When we were, just prior to going to break, we were talking about making it through, and you talked about this company in Chicago, and your efforts to get something through, and the displacement, or maybe should I say, the distance between industry and business and government, as I understood it. But you were talking about the interim in 2020 of making face masks. And I remember seeing you on ABC News, and you were trying to express that. I got the feeling that at that time that you were trying to send a message to the governor.
I was trying to send a very clear and very succinct message, which was I was running a company in Chicago that had sewing capabilities. And at that point in time, people were desperately looking for face masks. And that was not just business and individuals, but it was the government. We eventually sold 50,000 of our masks to Cook County sheriffs to utilize in the Cook County jail system. But the frustrations of trying to get through the bureaucracy, whether it was the chief of staffs, et cetera, everything was just never heard. No one responded. And again, admittedly, in late March, early April of 2020, I think everyone was scurrying around trying to figure out where can we get supply. And yet here I had a factory that was ready to reopen. We had a mask already developed that we could mass produce, and nobody would give us the time of day. And it was just so debilitating, because here we had the one thing that you need when it comes to making face masks. I had 800 sewing machines that could have been deployed at the snap of a finger, and yet we couldn't find anybody in the government that wanted to take them from us. So we pivoted and started doing outreach within network of professional friends and colleagues, et cetera, saying that we've got a factory that can make masks. The largest order we have was with Uber. They bought 90,000 from us in April 2020. Cook County jails, again, they bought 50,000. And it went down to a law firm, again, that I think we mentioned earlier, that bought 200 from us. And we weren't trying to make money. We were just trying to keep our people employed. And so the frustration with the government was just unending. And it, frankly, it hasn't changed. And so, yes, the segment that I did was predicated on we're trying to help, and we can't find a way and an avenue to provide that help.
It was almost like a plea. It was almost like you were pleading.
I was begging. I was begging somebody in the government to reach out and say, we saw the segment, how can we work together and partner?
Do you see, even today, as we're sitting here talking in 2022, do you see today that there's still a displacement, that government maybe needs to kind of refocus a little bit and understand industry and business a bit more in decision making?
Oh my goodness.
I've opened a big door there, I know. But.
Well, the thing that I will say professionally, the worst thing that any business or business owner or CEO can do or accept is paralysis in decision making. Make a decision. Now, if you are building a rocket ship, you might need to have a slightly different process for making decisions, but I'm making garments. If we decide to change the lapel front by a quarter narrower or a quarter wider and customers don't like it, we can fix it and we can change it and take it back to where it once was. But you sit there and people obsess about making decisions, and they obsess about them. They go to committee and to this committee and all that. Make the decision, move on, and assess if you made the right decision after the fact. The government at all levels is the epitome of paralysis in decision making, in my opinion. And that's not to say that it's ill-intended or it's done maliciously, but it's just the way the governments have evolved. And I think there's a fear in government about making decisions, and nobody really ultimately wants to take the responsibility for that.
The big thing that I'm hearing, and I've heard other people in business as well, is this understanding, or should I say maybe a lack of understanding, that the dynamic of who we are as a nation, when you look at who we are, has been not only led, but developed by innovators, business and industry decision makers. The other structural parts of that is to ensure that the pathways for doing that through business and industry is not impeded.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Well, and I'm going to say this, and I'm not in any way, shape, or form trying to compare our company in Chicago to any of the wonderful companies, but think back to World War II. You were coming out of a depression in this country, and things were starting to improve. All of a sudden, we're in the middle of a war. And industry, whether it was Ford or General Motors or Boeing, you name the company, and how quickly they pivoted from making automobiles or refrigerators to making tanks and ships and planes. We pivoted to making masks in 4 weeks. Again, it's impossible for me to try to equate my little business up in Chicago to a GM or a Ford, but that I think is more indicative of the fact that companies have the ability to pivot and pivot very quickly. I have a very close friend who owns a company in Oklahoma. It's a plastics-based company who basically all they do is make plastic gift cards that all of us are very familiar with. They pivoted within 5 weeks to making plastic face shields. They had no expertise in it. They didn't have a pattern. They didn't have the machinery set up for it. But yet in 5 to 6 weeks, they were shipping thousands upon thousands of these face shields. That's the thing that industry in this country has been so well thought of historically, is its ability to truly turn on a dime and go in a completely different direction based on the need that is out there within society, within the country as a whole. And that is also indicative of the fact that there is not paralysis in decision making. There is the ability to see through, all the morass and just say, we need to do that. How do we make it happen? And so many of these companies are able to do that.
And one of the things in mentioning that just struck me as well is that basically it's an example of supply demand and the ability to be agile enough to adjust to that. My favorite word, and everybody that knows me professionally knows this, it's the word nimble. Agile might be a good commonality to that. But nimble means you can truly stop what you're doing, see where you need to go, and pursue that new goal the next day or within a very, very short span of time, and not allow the natural impediments that are out there to get in the way of making that shift and making that change. I talked quite a bit to business owners and so forth, and I'm always looking information. And one of the things that struck me in a recent conversation, and it was very simply put, is that the best thing government can do for me, the business person said, is not get in my way. Is that too oversimplified, or is that something that's real?
I think that it's probably a little too simplified, because there does need to be some element of regulation or control or oversight, because people will take advantage of the circumstances if there is not. I mentioned I grew up in California, and third generation Californian. I grew up seeing immigration coming into the United States every single day. I believe that immigration is the thing that has made this country what it is, whether it's from Asia or Africa, Europe, Eastern Europe, you name it. And I used to see very often, people who were taken advantage of, who they may have been here illegally, and I don't condone illegal immigration by any stretch, but these people have come here to do work that you or I no longer will do. And as I mentioned, I think when we were in a break, I worked at Disneyland when I was during my university years. When I was there in the mid-'70s, virtually everyone that worked there looked more like me. It was a very, Caucasian-oriented society in Orange County. You go there today, and it's a very, very different workforce. It's very ethnic, very diverse. But they're here legally, and they're not being taken advantage of. And that's where the government, I believe, does have a role, is to try and make sure that the human experience is one where people are not taken advantage of, and the companies they work for maintain a safe and healthy work environment. That, again, your business is predicated on having a full workforce every single day. I can't do every job at Garland or at the facility up in Chicago. I need staff to do the work. But they also need to have a safe working environment, which means if they have to wear masks to stay safe from COVID, they need to be vaccinated, whatever the circumstances may be. My job and role is to make sure that we adhere to basic standards. And the government, I think, to some extent, is here to enforce those standards. And their oversight is not something that I consider to be unacceptable. I think their oversight at times may reach beyond where common sense enters the conversation. I don't believe the government shows a lot of common sense all the time. And again, but they do have a role in all this.
We're going to go to another break. When we come back, I want to follow that up, and then I want to get into a bit of information about maybe what you're looking for at Garland Shirt Company, what your expectations is, and maybe even more importantly, what the future may look like 5 years down the road at Garland.
Terrific.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking with Kenneth Ragland, the owner, CEO, operator, man in charge, Garland Shirt Company. We're glad to have him this morning discussing some issues that he's facing there and the growth and potential. We'll be back in a moment. Call a friend. Stay tuned.
Just because something may work doesn't mean it's right for your business. Let Star Communications' knowledgeable consultants help you customize a hosted voice system that's right for you. Our dedicated experts work with you to understand your business needs and guide you at every step, from choosing and installing services to ongoing maintenance and support. Contact Star today.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thanks for being with us. We're going to continue our conversation with Kenneth Ragland, who is the president of W Diamond Corp in Chicago, also the owner of Garland Shirt Company, making quite a name for yourself here in the eastern part of North Carolina. I'm going to step out of it in the sense of localizing this because, of course, this show is aired in multiple locations. When I say you're making a name for yourself here, you've already got a very strong name in the cut and sew business throughout, I'm going to say throughout a large portion of this country. You've got footprints in Chicago, of course, New York, Washington, came from California, now in Garland. You've reopened. You've got employees. As we sit here and talk today, there's employees at the Garland Shirt Company working, putting product together. What's your expectation in Garland? And after that, I want to get into the kind of people that you're looking for, that person. What is that? What are those traits you're looking for from people?
Well, I think I'll answer the second piece. The traits I'm looking for is somebody that's looking for stability, looking to be working with us for a long period of time. I will equate that to the factory that I have in Chicago. The average tenure of the employees up there is 22 years. The Garland factory historically had a very strong tenure element to it when it was owned by Brooks Brothers, and we want to maintain that. There are 70 or so people who are now actively working at Garland. Of those, I believe all but 2 had worked at the factory up to the day when it closed a couple of years ago. When we did an open house, a job fair in September, we had over 90 people show up. Virtually all 90 had worked at the factory at the time that it closed or had worked in the factory in the prior 5 years before it closed. So there's a connection that these people in this community and in Sampson County and Garland have to the factory. When I addressed all the employees at Christmas time, we were having a little Christmas party and luncheon. You could sense that this was a family. I think we have a very similar dynamic up in Chicago. We treat people respectfully. We treat them decently. We do hold them accountable. If they don't show up to work, every day on time, there can be discipline that is associated with it, but that's something we don't want to talk about very much. We believe and hope that most of the employees will be there on time, will show up, will do their job to the best of their ability, leave, go home, take care of their families, their personal needs, and then return the following day. An indication of who we are as business owners at Christmas, and I don't want to make this sound like this was some magnanimous gesture, but I gave every employee an American Express gift card as just a simple way of saying, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, and thank you. It was $50. It was not a large number, but it was the sentiment that I think, from my point of view, means something to people. You're not singling somebody out. You're just simply saying to every one of them, we're glad you're here. And I remember saying, there will be more of these. Just keep working hard, working smart, and everyone will benefit from it.
I want to just kind of inject this in what you just said right now. You do realize that a lot of what you've done and what you're doing at that plant is you're literally giving folks a pathway for a future. And I say for a future. Without that, it kind of limits where they could do what they could do, what they were capability of doing.
I don't know Sampson County in this area, eastern North Carolina, well enough. I'm going to be very candid about that. I have a general sense of what the majority of industry is. It seems that it's predominantly agricultural based. So I do believe that we're affording these individuals an alternative to what might be their professional life if we were not there. Again, we are a union shop. I'm not going to sit here and opine as to whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. What I will say is it does require us to pay a higher wage per hour than we would be required in the state based on the state's minimum wage laws. I've told people that we're doing business with, we're not going to be the least expensive cut and sew operator operation that you're going to deal with, because we are trying to take care of our employees. And our benefits are second to none. I would argue they're probably just about as good as you would get if you were in a government job. As far as healthcare, 401k, the 401k match, time off, vacation time, et cetera. I think it's a very fair and very equitable package that we offer. And I think that, again, is why we are an alternative for most of our workforce. So
you mentioned a number of the folks that are working there now that have come back are people that were working for Brooks Brothers. Mm-hmm. What did you have to do, or what should I say, maybe put it this way, what did you explain to those folks before they came and you actually hired them that was going to be different working for you than working for Brooks Brothers?
I think the biggest thing that we tried to inject in their minds was that we were going to be open to listening to them as individual employees. And the example I'll cite is very simple. The person that's working on a sewing machine, on a pressing machine, on a cutting machine, management's going to sit there and tell you how to do your job because we think we know how to do your job. I guarantee you the person that's actually doing the job knows how to do it better. They can figure out shortcuts, they can figure workarounds, and it doesn't affect quality, it doesn't affect anything, but it allows them to be more efficient. And most of our employees are paid on what's called piece rate, which basically means the more they produce, the more they get paid. So it's an incentive-based system. So of course, the smart operator is going to figure out how, instead of doing 10 shirts an hour, how can I do 12 shirts an hour and get paid based on that? We need to listen to the people that are actually doing the work because they know. And they'll know if a machine is not operating properly. I can't look at every machine every minute of the day. So we've instilled a sense of, tell us what's going on, tell us what you need. We had a situation just last week where an employee said, if we could bring this machine over here, it would allow us to cut out 2 or 3 operations and steps. We did. And the person said afterwards, in the old days, I wouldn't have even tried to, suggest that because I would have just been told, do your job. So it's much more inclusive. It doesn't mean that everyone we're not a society that everyone has an equal voice because someone still has to ultimately make a final decision. But the encouragement of being willing to share, willing to be open and communicate is something that we have instilled from the very, very beginning. And I do think that we're already starting to reap the benefits of that.
So as a marketing moment here, and now you're speaking to a large audience of folks out there, and you're looking at, as I think you had mentioned in something I read, that you're looking at possibly expanding that workforce in the next year or so. What would you say to folks that hadn't thought about a cut and sew operation as a job, but that kind of interests me? Maybe they're intrigued because they've heard a bit about you. What would you say to them that I'm looking for from you if you come here? Not what I'm going to give you, but what I'm expecting from you.
I'm expecting and looking for someone that will show up every day, who will work hard, will work intelligently and smartly, will be willing to share their opinion when they see something that they think could be done differently or perhaps a little more easily. I'm looking for somebody that wants to be working inside a nice, warm, and comfortable factory during the cold months and a comfortable, cool factory during the hotter months of the year. A lot of people, if they work out in agriculture or they work in other places, they may not have as controlled an environment. I want somebody that wants to be part of a team. And I know that's something that's very easy to say, but the people that work for us, they do sense that they are part of a family, they are part of a team. I don't want somebody that's going to come in there and be a troublemaker. I want people that can fit in, not conform, but are willing to put in the time and effort. And if they want to, there is absolutely no question about where their future can be.
Do you think it's an advantage to folks to know that if they go to work at Garland Shirt Company, that they actually could know the guy that owns it and talk to him or see him and that kind of thing? Do you see that as a huge advantage?
I do, because most times, most employees don't know who the owner is or very rarely see the owner or the president. I will be there shortly, and first thing I'll do is I'll walk out on the factory floor and say good morning to people. I'm very human, as I believe all of my employees are. I think I like to have somebody say good morning to me. How are you doing? I'm never going to know everyone on a first name basis. There's just too many people to know, but a smile goes a long way. And again, it's just treating people respectfully and decently and humanely. And if a smile works, then you know what? I'm going to be the first one out there to do it.
Should folks that hear this and listen to you and say, I think I'd like to try that, should they call the Garland Shirt Company? How did they apply?
They can actually apply and call.
Can they just show up at the door and say, I want to fill out an application?
That's actually what's been the most thing since we reopened and the parking lot is full again. People are stopping by virtually every day and filling out applications. And the word's out in the community that we're looking to hire somewhere between another 50 to 60 individuals in the next 6 months. And a lot of that next iteration of staff is already engaged in that. When we had the job fair a few months ago, we told them that we will be bringing them in because they're experienced operators, but we've had plenty of people who don't have experience that just like what we're doing, have heard pieces or read things in the local press and papers, and they want to be a part of it. There just seems to be a good groundswell locally, and I'm very grateful for that, because that's clearly a fear that all executives and business owners and managers has today is, it's great, I've got a factory. Now, can I find the people that can come in and actually do the work? Right now, it seems that we are in a very good position and a good place. And then to augment that, we're in an even better place because we're having such an incredible amount of inquiries and demand towards the business.
We're going to take another break. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in a moment. We're talking with Kenneth Ragland, the president, owner of Garland Shirt Company. There might be a place for you there. Listen to this last segment and see if you can fit you in. We're back in a moment.
Let's get out of here.
Protect what matters most in your life with security from Star Communications.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're coming up on our last segment. Thank you for being with us today. The show's called We Should Know. And if you want to send us a message, we should know edu@gmail.com. Thank you for watching and listening to us each and every week. We're talking with Kenneth Ragland. Kenneth, you're the owner of the Garland Shirt Company. You're well-traveled. You've done this kind of work as a CEO, manager, owner, COO, a lot of titles over your career. You have now kindled a fire in Garland, North Carolina, right here almost in the middle of southeastern North Carolina. The shirt company is alive. It is working as we sit here today. We talked in just this segment previous folks that you're looking for and the potential. Let's get into that a bit more in the expansion piece and the product development piece. I think we talked a bit off air and on air about some of the companies that maybe you're enticing or that may be looking at coming here. The companies I've seen and that you've already mentioned in some other media platforms are some very high profile companies. Ralph Lauren, various other companies is that you've mentioned, but let's talk about that. What does that look like and where are you going? Are you looking at that exclusivity market? And you also mentioned that you're looking for a product line that may be labeled Garland Shirt.
So let's take the first to the second part. We are offering our services to a variety of companies here in the United States, from Polo Ralph Lauren being one. We are also talking and continue to talk with Brooks Brothers. We expect that Brooks Brothers will return to Garland in the coming months. Larger companies like that, all the way down to a very interesting company out of Montana called Duckworth, where they own a 100,000 acre sheep farm. They shear their own sheep. They have the shearings converted into wool, and then that wool then is converted into fabric, and fabric they then do cut and sew. We're looking at doing cut and sew for them, down the road. They're a small business, maybe a few thousand units a year versus what a Brooks Brothers or a Polo Ralph Lauren might provide. So that's the shirting side of things. We're also evolving the factory, which historically only made dress shirts and sport shirts, to where we're going to offer what I'll call tailored units. So sport coats, suits, overcoats, trousers. I want Garland to be something that is very unique in this country, in that most times you go to a shirt factory to get your shirts, you go to a tailored factory to get those items. We want to be all of that in one location. That then dovetails to the last thing that you mentioned, which is we are currently looking at the likely possibility that we will develop a brand. It's right now the most likely iteration is called Garland Works. The tag of Works is going to mean that it works for the community, it works for the employees, it works for its customers. We want to evoke something that is very special. We're looking at that as not competing with the people that we would be doing cut and sew work for. We're looking at it from the standpoint of, we think there's a place for a made in the U.S. brand that is sewn locally. We're going to be sustainable in terms of our packaging. We're going to try and source as much of our fabric, whether it's cotton or wools, domestically, and try and help other companies in the United States that are trying to do the same thing that we are, and that is maintain a business presence here in the country. I had an interview, kind of an elongated interview yesterday with a potential designer and merchandiser for that business. We haven't made a final decision. I still have, some other elements that have to be evaluated, but I think our desire is eventually to have our own brand that is tied to the local community and factory. And that all means that we're going to be out actively hiring. I know at one time, probably 10 years or less ago, Brooks Brothers employed more than 200 employees in the Garland facility. Nothing would make me happier than to see that factory return to that level of employment or larger. Very frankly, when we bought the factory and what have you, there's an adjacent 9-acre vacant parcel to the west of where the factory sits today. I honestly will tell you, I believe there is a likelihood in 2 to 4 years that we might have to develop on that 9 acres, because the demand would be such that the current factory, which is 78,000 square feet, just would not physically be able to handle the demand. And nothing would make me happier than put a brand new building that's more state of the art in terms of its construction and ventilation systems and steam and power here in the local community. Everybody that I've met with locally, from the former Mayor Murphy, to Stephen Barrington here at the Economic Development Council in Sampson County, and the commissioners, everyone has been welcoming, encouraging, and that's made things much, much easier. And I have meetings today at the county offices to try and secure some training grants, because as we bring in new product, this is truly going to be something that my employees, current or to be current, have never seen a suit. They've never seen a sport coat from a sewing standpoint. We're looking for help. We'd like to have help, because the challenge that we run into in the cut and sew industry is that for every 10 people that we hire, on average, 3 or 4 actually then stay long term, which means that I may have to pay somebody thousands of dollars over a few month period of time as they're trying to acclimate and become efficient, and they decide they just don't like the job. They don't like where it's located, whatever the circumstances. But I've made an investment in that individual, and really didn't get much in the way of the return back. And I'm not complaining about it. It's just a function that not everyone is suited to be in a cut and sew factory.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because it is a unique thing to see in the same location a suiting operation
Absolutely.
and a shirt operation. I think somewhere you had made a statement previously that I read that said it may be the first to have both combined.
Could very well be. Typically most cut and sew operators are set to be focused on something they know very well. Up in the Chicago area, for example, there are companies that do upholstery for car seats, and that's all they do. They get efficient at it. There's automation they can introduce. We're trying to buck the system a little bit by becoming more relevant to more individual companies. The more products that we can do, the more products that we can cut and sew, the more relevant we are. And as you start thinking about all the various brands, whether it's a Polo Ralph Lauren or a Brooks Brothers, you can just name the names. Typically, they all have jackets of some form or another and coats, and they almost always have shirts.
That's right.
Why not try and go to one company who can do all of it for you and coordinate and make things much easier for you?
One statement I want to get to this too before we have to leave today. You mentioned that you will probably, highly possible, almost definitely, I guess, you're going to be bringing in some employees that's going to kind of change the cultural flavor here in that some of the management folks. And I found that to be not only exciting, but very interesting. Speak to that.
I am bringing in a management team from Chicago. The new president here in Garland, who will be here day to day. She'll be moving down here the middle of next month. Her name is Sasha Schmitz. She has been with me for 10 years. I truly would go to war with her. She is somebody that I trust. I know her interests and my interests are completely aligned in terms of how we treat people, how we think about our employees, and other management that are coming down. I do believe it will change the culture here. And I'm not trying to suggest that the culture here historically wasn't a productive one. The challenge that Garland, I think, had over the years is management and ownership did not live in the Garland community or the Garland area. They were either in New York, where Brooks Brothers was headquartered, or the founders and owners of the Brooks business, or not founders, but the owner of, was based in Italy. I want the management team, the executive, a person that has an interest in the company, Ms. Schmitz, for example, I want her local. I want her to be the person that people see every day. I've got interest in Chicago and the interest here. And very candidly, I'm supposed to be retiring this year. I was supposed to have retired 12 days ago.
I'm thinking about a whole nother show with you on that.
Yeah, but I'm not going anyplace. I'm not going to be sitting on the beach the rest of my life and disconnected. I'll still be very, very involved. But having the executive that's in charge on site every day, I think for the employees makes a difference, because now they know who is the decision maker, and I want Sasha to be that person. She knows how to run a factory. She knows how to take care of the people, and that's what she's going to be down here doing.
A lot of friends watch this show. It's in the real estate business, so I'm probably going to start getting some calls.
She's already got an agent. She's already picked out a gated
so you go ahead and put that to the rest.
I think we're good on that one.
So as we kind of come to close here, we got about a minute and a half left. I want to just kind of open it up. Is there anything else you need to or feel compelled to say to the community about not only your style, but your business that maybe we have missed that you wanted to touch on?
I'm not sure that we've missed much. What I am is I'm very grateful. I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'm grateful for the support that's been provided locally and in the community. I'm most grateful for the fact that we've had employees that were ready and prepared to come back to the factory and reestablish the relationship that they had for many, many years. There truly is a sense of family there. And while families don't get along every minute of every day, and they never will, ultimately they're family, and they recognize these are people they care about. They support one another, and they take care of one another. And so this small town, this small community is indicative of that. And I think that we again can redevelop that mindset here in this factory, and I think we can augment that mindset even further by just really, really taking care of the people that are here.
Ken, I want to thank you again for being here today. We got to get you out of here because you got to do business. So thanks for coming, and I want to try to impress upon you as you move forward. We'd like to have you come back and maybe have a conversation about where you are at that moment. If there's things that you need to get out information-wise, education-wise, we're here for you. So thanks for being here.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us today. We look forward to seeing you again next week right here on We Should Know. And as always, in close, we say, may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host JW Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.